Valerie Harper, the powerful CEO of Harper Motors, leaned back at her chair, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee mug. The weight of the company's recent reports hung heavy on her shoulders. She had worked tirelessly to build Harper Motors into an empire, but now a disturbing undercurrent had emerged. Employees were becoming increasingly dissatisfied, and whispers of aggressive sales tactics, unethical management, and a toxic work culture were swirling. Valerie couldn't ignore it any longer. She had to witness the reality for herself. Determined to understand the true state of the company, Valerie decided to go undercover. She would disguise herself as a simple salesperson named Lila and walk through the doors of one of her showrooms, experiencing firsthand what her employees dealt with every day. She knew the risks. If her true identity were discovered too soon, it could lead to a mess of PR disasters. But she was ready. True leadership, after all, required more than sitting in an office making decisions from afar. It meant connecting with people, understanding their struggles, and ensuring her company's values were upheld. With a deep breath, Valerie adjusted her disguise, preparing to step into a world of challenges, deceit, and potential transformation. The showroom buzzed with activity as customers milled about, examining vehicles, speaking with salespeople, and haggling over deals. As Valerie, now disguised as Lila, walked through the showroom doors, she immediately felt the intensity of the atmosphere. Employees wore forced smiles, their nervous eyes darting between customers and their manager. It was a pressure cooker, a place where sales were the only thing that mattered, no matter the cost. It didn't take long before she noticed Trent, the showroom manager, pacing behind his team like a predator sizing up its prey. His sharp, calculating eyes scanned the room, and his tone was abrasive, cutting through the air with every order he barked. "Sell, sell, sell," he yelled, his voice like a whip snapping. Valerie could see the tension in the air as employees scrambled to meet his demands. Soon, a young couple entered, tentative and hopeful, clearly out of their depth in the car buying process. Valerie could sense their anxiety as they looked at a shiny, overpriced model. Trent was on them immediately, manipulating the situation with practiced ease. He pushed the couple into a deal they couldn't afford, all while flashing them a fake smile. Valerie's heart clenched as she watched Trent's ruthless tactics unfold before her eyes. Something had to change. Valerie's instincts surged. She couldn't just stand by and watch the young couple fall into Trent's manipulative grasp. She had to intervene. With a calm but firm step, Valerie approached the couple, offering a friendly smile. "Are you sure this is the best option for you?" she asked, her voice filled with genuine concern. Trent immediately noticed her, narrowing his eyes. "Lila, stay out of it," he snapped. His tone was condescending, as if Valerie's opinion was irrelevant. But she wasn't deterred. The young couple looked to Valerie with uncertain eyes, and she could see their hesitance, their fear of making a mistake they couldn't afford. "It's important to take your time with decisions like this," she said gently, addressing the couple. "Let's find something that fits your budget, not just what looks good." Trent's frustration was evident. He stepped forward, attempting to regain control of the situation. "She doesn't know what she's talking about. This is the deal you want," he growled. But Valerie wasn't intimidated. She stood tall, her voice steady. "Trust me, you don't want to make a decision you'll regret." The couple's shoulders visibly relaxed, their trust shifting toward Valerie. Trent huffed in irritation, but Valerie had already made her point. For a brief moment, it felt as though justice had been served. As the day wore on, Valerie continued to observe Trent's behavior, each interaction revealing more of his true nature. His cruelty wasn't limited to customers. It extended to his own team as well. Employees moved around him like frightened animals, their heads down, trying to avoid his sharp gaze. If anyone made a mistake, no matter how small, Trent was quick to berate them in front of everyone, humbling them with humiliating comments. Valerie watched one of his employees, Mia, try to ask a question about a customer's request, only for Trent to respond with a derisive laugh. "What? You think you know better?" he mocked. Mia's face flushed, and she quickly retreated, her shoulders hunched in shame. Carlos, another employee, attempted to speak up during a team meeting, only to be cut off and belittled by Trent, who insisted, "Your opinions don't matter. Just do what I tell you." The toxic environment was unbearable, and Valerie could feel the anger rising in her chest. It was clear that Trent was creating a culture of fear and manipulation. No one felt safe to speak their mind or act with integrity under his leadership. Valerie knew she couldn't let this go on. She had to make a change, and it needed to happen soon. Despite the cloud of negativity that Trent cast over the showroom, there were moments of light. Valerie observed Mia and Carlos in the midst of the chaos, quietly doing their best to make a positive difference. While Trent's influence tried to sour every interaction, Mia greeted customers with a warm, sincere smile, asking questions to understand their needs and guiding them through the buying process with honesty. Carlos, too, exhibited compassion, taking extra time to ensure that customers felt listened to and understood. Valerie saw the difference between Trent's manipulation and the authentic care that Mia and Carlos brought to their work. They treated people as human beings, not as dollar signs. These employees believed in the company's mission, even if their manager had long since lost sight of it. It was clear that not everyone at Harper Motors was complicit in Trent's unethical tactics. In fact, there were employees like Mia and Carlos who still held onto the values that had made Harper Motors great in the first place: integrity, empathy, and respect. Valerie made a mental note to protect and nurture these employees who were the true heart of the company. The more Valerie observed, the clearer it became. Trent wasn't just a poor manager. He was a force of destruction within the company. His actions weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a larger pattern of toxicity that permeated the culture at Harper Motors. Valerie's heart grew heavier as she saw the employees cower under his reign, their spirits crushed by his constant manipulation and disdain. By now, Valerie had spent several days working undercover, silently gathering evidence of Trent's unethical behavior. She had witnessed countless instances of customers being misled, employees being belittled, and the entire atmosphere turning into a pressure cooker where only those willing to deceive thrived. As the days passed, Valerie felt her resolve harden. She could no longer ignore the truth. The company that had once stood for trust and quality had devolved into a shadow of its former self, all because of one man's selfish ambition. The hardest part was realizing how many employees had been worn down by the toxic culture. Many had stopped caring about doing what was right. They were too afraid to speak up, too beaten down by Trent's relentless tactics. Valerie knew something had to change, and it had to happen fast. It was the end of another long day, and Valerie was still in the showroom, helping a family with their car purchase. Trent had just finished tearing into another employee for a minor mistake, his sharp words echoing across the room. The tension in the showroom was unbearable. Valerie could feel her patience thinning. She watched Mia, who was clearly uncomfortable as Trent tore into her colleague, her face flushed with embarrassment. Mia tried to hold it together, but the shame was evident. Carlos, too, looked visibly drained, his energy sapped from trying to appease Trent's impossible demands while still trying to treat customers with dignity. Valerie couldn't ignore it any longer. The tipping point had come. She had seen enough of Trent's cruelty and manipulation. She had heard enough of the heartbreaking stories from the employees who had been forced into compromising their integrity for fear of losing their jobs. Valerie was done standing on the sidelines. Tomorrow, it would all come to a head. She would confront Trent, expose the truth, and take the first step toward rebuilding Harper Motors into a company of values once again. The following morning, Valerie gathered all of the showroom staff together for a mandatory meeting. The tension was palpable as employees quietly took their seats, unsure of what to expect. Trent, ever confident, sat at the head of the table, unaware of the storm that was about to hit him. As Valerie entered the room, she could feel the eyes of every employee on her, their curiosity piqued. With a calm but commanding voice, she began. "I've been working undercover in this showroom for the past several days as a new employee. I've witnessed everything. Your struggles, your hard work, and the toxic culture that has taken hold under Trent's leadership." The room fell silent, shock and disbelief spreading across the faces of the employees. Trent's face turned pale as he realized what was happening. Valerie didn't mince words. "Trent, you've created an environment of fear, manipulation, and dishonesty. That ends today." Trent stood up, sputtering with anger, but Valerie didn't let him speak. "You're fired, Trent. Effective immediately." The room erupted into murmurs of disbelief and relief. Valerie turned to the employees, her voice steady. "From this point forward, Harper Motors will be a company built on integrity, respect, and honesty. We will rebuild from the ground up, together." The following days were a whirlwind of change. Word spread quickly that Trent had been fired, and there was a renewed sense of hope among the employees. Many had been too afraid to speak up before, but now, with Trent gone, they felt they had a voice again. Valerie immediately began to implement new policies to ensure that the toxic culture would never return. She held open forums with employees to hear their concerns, offering them a safe space to speak honestly about the challenges they faced. She began to work with the remaining staff, including Mia and Carlos, to build a new framework that prioritized ethical sales tactics and mutual respect. The transformation wasn't easy, but Valerie was committed. She personally trained new management, ensuring they understood the values she wanted Harper Motors to stand for. Slowly but surely, the showroom atmosphere began to change. The pressure lifted, replaced with a sense of camaraderie. The employees who had once felt beaten down now stood taller, confident that their work mattered and that they had the support of their leadership. Rebuilding trust within the company was a slow and delicate process. Valerie knew it would take time for the employees to fully believe in the changes she was implementing. Many were still scarred by the years of toxic leadership under Trent, and trust, once broken, was hard to restore. But Valerie was patient. She knew that trust wasn't earned overnight. It had to be demonstrated day by day through consistency, respect, and transparency. She worked closely with the staff to ensure that their voices were heard and their needs were met. Mia and Carlos, who had been models of integrity during the darkest days, became her pillars of support. Together, they created training programs for new employees, focusing on empathy, honesty, and customer care. Valerie knew that by empowering her staff, she could create a new culture, one where integrity was the foundation of everything Harper Motors stood for. Slowly but surely, Valerie watched as her employees began to take pride in their work again. The atmosphere in the showroom shifted from one of fear to one of trust and respect. It was a long road, but Valerie was determined to rebuild the company she had once loved into something even better. Weeks passed, and the changes at Harper Motors began to take root. The once dreaded showroom now buzzed with a sense of camaraderie and mutual respect. Employees like Mia and Carlos, who had always exemplified the company's values, now found themselves in leadership roles, guiding new recruits with the same compassion and professionalism they had always shown. It was clear that the transformation had begun, but there were still hurdles ahead. Valerie felt proud of the progress, but she knew that rebuilding trust among the staff and the customers would take time. The company had lost its reputation, and the path to reclaiming it was long. Valerie made sure that every meeting, every interaction, emphasized the new vision of Harper Motors, one rooted in integrity, transparency, and fairness. One day, as Valerie walked through the showroom, she overheard a conversation between two salespeople. "Have you noticed how much better things are around here?" one said. "It feels like we're all actually working together, not just competing for sales." The words were a sign of hope. The toxic culture Trent had cultivated was slowly but surely being replaced by something more powerful. A culture of trust and shared success. Despite the changes within the company, Valerie knew there were still some who hadn't fully embraced the new direction. Some employees were hesitant, unsure of how to move forward after so many years of being conditioned to put profits over people. Valerie knew she couldn't force change. She had to lead by example, proving that Harper Motors was truly different now. One afternoon, as she sat in her office reflecting on the progress, she received an unexpected visit from a former employee who had left the company after Trent's firing. His name was Paul, and he had worked under Trent's rule for years. He had been one of the many employees who had been bullied and pushed to manipulate customers just to keep his job. "I didn't think I could ever come back," Paul said, sitting across from Valerie. "But I heard things are different now, and I want to believe it." Valerie looked at him, her eyes soft with understanding. "It's different, but you have to be willing to trust us and yourself again." She paused. "I can't change the past, but we can build a future we're all proud of." Paul smiled, the first real smile Valerie had seen from him in years. "I like to try." As the internal culture at Harper Motors began to stabilize, Valerie turned her attention to the company's external reputation. Word had gotten out that the company was undergoing a major transformation, but Valerie knew it would take more than just a few internal changes to win back customer trust. She needed to prove to the public that Harper Motors was a place where integrity mattered. She launched a marketing campaign that focused not just on the cars they sold, but on the values they stood for. The campaign emphasized honesty, transparency, and a commitment to treating every customer with respect. It featured stories from employees like Mia and Carlos, who spoke about the difference in their work environment since the leadership change. Valerie also invited customers who had been misled by Trent's tactics to share their experiences, offering them a public apology and making things right. Slowly, customers began to return. They appreciated the new approach, and the sense of authenticity resonated with them. Sales numbers climbed as people saw Harper Motors as a company that truly cared about their needs, rather than just making a profit. The weeks turned into months, and Valerie could finally say that Harper Motors had entered a new era. The showroom, once a battleground of deception and manipulation, now radiated positivity and trust. Salespeople no longer competed in a cutthroat manner. Instead, they worked together to ensure customers found exactly what they needed. Mia and Carlos had flourished in their new roles, helping to mentor new employees and ensure that the company's values were upheld in every interaction. Valerie, watching from a distance, couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride. She had taken the company through one of the toughest challenges it had ever faced, and the results were evident. The company's profits had rebounded, but it wasn't just about the bottom line anymore. Valerie knew that true success came from creating a place where people were valued, respected, and treated with dignity. Harper Motors was no longer just a business. It was a community. And Valerie had learned that leadership wasn't just about making tough decisions. It was about inspiring others to do what was right. As the anniversary of Trent's firing approached, Valerie stood on the balcony of her office, looking out over the bustling showroom below. It had been a long journey, but she had witnessed firsthand how far the company had come. The toxic culture that once defined Harper Motors had been replaced with one of integrity and respect. But the journey wasn't over. Valerie knew that leadership was a continuous process of learning, growing, and improving. The change she had implemented would be her legacy, but it wasn't just her story to tell. It was the story of every employee who had stood with her, every person who had been brave enough to trust again, and every customer who had given them a second chance. As Valerie walked through the showroom one final time, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. The road to rebuilding had been difficult, but it had taught her a valuable lesson. Leadership wasn't just about profit margins and business strategies. It was about people, about doing the right thing, even when it wasn't easy. And in the end, that was the true measure of success. With a smile, Valerie turned her back on the showroom, knowing that Harper Motors was now a company that would thrive on integrity, compassion, and respect for years to come. Let me know if you'd like to adjust or add more details. The success Valerie had achieved in transforming Harper Motors was only the beginning of a much broader vision. She had learned that the foundation of a great company was built not just on its products, but on the values it upheld and the people who made it thrive. Yet, Valerie knew the work was far from complete. The auto industry was constantly evolving, and the way customers interacted with companies was changing, too. As she stood in her office, looking at the latest industry reports, Valerie reflected on the legacy she had created. She had already redefined the internal culture at Harper Motors, but now it was time to think about the company's role in the future. What kind of company did she want Harper Motors to be in the next decade? What impact did she want to make not just on the business world, but on the communities they served? She knew the answer wasn't just about selling cars. It was about creating a sustainable business model, one that prioritized environmental responsibility, community engagement, and social impact. She wanted Harper Motors to lead the way in ethical innovation. It was time to take the lessons of the past and turn them into a roadmap for a more compassionate and forward-thinking future. Valerie drafted plans for new initiatives, offering eco-friendly vehicle options, creating programs to support local communities, and implementing more inclusive policies to ensure that everyone, regardless of background, felt welcome at Harper Motors. Valerie's vision for the future of Harper Motors began to take shape. She brought in consultants to help create a comprehensive sustainability strategy that included everything from eco-friendly car production to reducing the company's carbon footprint in their showrooms and offices. It was a massive undertaking, but Valerie was unwavering in her determination. She had already proved that Harper Motors could rise from the ashes of its past. Now it was time to prove that it could lead the way into the future. She rallied her team of executives, including Mia and Carlos, to develop new initiatives that would set Harper Motors apart. One of the first projects was launching an electric vehicle line, a bold move that aligned with Valerie's commitment to environmental responsibility. She knew it wouldn't be easy. The auto industry was dominated by traditional combustion engine vehicles, and many customers were hesitant about making the switch. But Valerie was determined. She believed in the power of change and innovation. As the months passed, the electric vehicle initiative gained momentum. Valerie personally spoke to customers about the new line, explaining how they could make a difference in reducing their carbon footprints. Slowly, customer attitudes began to shift. It wasn't just about getting from point A to point B anymore. It was about making conscious choices for the planet. Harper Motors became known as the company that wasn't afraid to push boundaries for the greater good. Along with the new environmental initiatives, Valerie wanted to ensure that Harper Motors had a tangible positive impact on the communities it served. It wasn't enough for her company to simply sell cars. It needed to give back in meaningful ways. Valerie launched several programs focused on education, job training, and economic development in underserved areas. One of the most impactful initiatives was the creation of a scholarship program for young students interested in pursuing careers in the automotive industry, particularly those from underrepresented communities. Valerie knew that true progress would only come when more people had access to opportunities. The scholarship program aimed to empower the next generation of leaders, engineers, and designers who could help shape the future of transportation. In addition to the scholarships, Harper Motors also partnered with local job training programs, offering internships and mentorships to young adults who were looking to break into the industry. Valerie's goal was to create a pipeline of talented, diverse individuals who could contribute to the company's future success and make the industry more inclusive. The ripple effect of these initiatives was already evident. Young students were applying for the scholarships, eager to build a career in an industry they once thought was out of reach. The employees of Harper Motors felt proud to work for a company that didn't just focus on profits, but also cared about making the world a better place. Even with the success of the new initiatives, not everyone was on board with the changes. Valerie faced resistance from some of the older stakeholders in the company who were more traditional in their thinking. For them, the idea of completely rethinking the business model and focusing so heavily on social responsibility seemed risky. The auto industry was notoriously competitive, and they believed the focus should still be on maximizing profits. But Valerie, having already weathered countless challenges, wasn't afraid of a little resistance. She understood that change often met with pushback, especially when it threatened established norms. She made it her mission to prove that ethical business practices and financial success didn't have to be mutually exclusive. Valerie sat down with these stakeholders and presented the data. The results were undeniable. The electric vehicle line was attracting a new, environmentally conscious customer base, and the community engagement initiatives had boosted the company's reputation. Sales were up, but more importantly, so was employee morale. A company that took pride in its ethical commitments was one that employees wanted to work for, and that made a significant difference in productivity. Through patient dialogue and transparency, Valerie was able to convince the reluctant stakeholders that embracing change wasn't just good for the soul, it was good for the bottom line too. With every passing day, Valerie saw Harper Motors transform into the company she had always envisioned. The toxic culture Trent had left behind was long gone, replaced by one of collaboration, transparency, and community. She could walk through the showroom with pride, knowing that the people she worked alongside were motivated by something more than just profit. They were motivated by purpose. One afternoon, as Valerie stood with Mia and Carlos in the showroom, reflecting on the journey they had been through, she smiled. This company, this family we've built, it's everything I hoped for and more. Mia nodded, her eyes bright. You showed us what real leadership looks like. You proved that integrity isn't just a buzzword. It's the foundation of everything we do here. Carlos added, and the best part is we get to help build something bigger than just sales numbers. We're creating something that matters, something that makes a difference. Valerie looked around at the employees who were busy assisting customers, exchanging ideas, and working together. She had achieved her goal, but it wasn't just about fixing a broken company. It was about creating a lasting legacy, one that would ensure Harper Motors would always stand for more than just cars. It would stand for something greater, a company where integrity, respect, and compassion drove everything they did. A year had passed since Valerie first walked into the Harper Motors showroom as Lila, the undercover salesperson. As she sat in her office, looking over the final reports for the quarter, she couldn't help but feel a deep sense of accomplishment. The company had not only recovered, it had flourished. Employee satisfaction was at an all-time high, customer trust had been restored, and Harper Motors was now recognized as a leader in ethical business practices. That morning, a letter arrived on her desk. It was from a young woman named Elena, one of the first recipients of the Harper Motors Scholarship. She had been accepted into an engineering program and wanted to personally thank Valerie for giving her a chance to pursue her dreams. As Valerie read the heartfelt words, she realized just how much of an impact the changes she had made were having, not just on her employees, but on the next generation. Later that day, she gathered the entire team in the showroom for an announcement. 1 year ago, we stood here at a crossroads, she began. We had two choices: continue down a path of deception or rebuild this company on the foundation of integrity and respect. Today, because of all of you, Harper Motors is stronger than ever. Applause filled the room. Valerie smiled, knowing this was just the beginning. Leadership wasn't about a single moment of change. It was about the continuous effort to do what was right. As she stepped outside, the sun shining down on the newly renovated showroom, she took a deep breath. Harper Motors had found its way, and so had she.